Feeling a little overwhelmed with all the tech you're having to learn this year? Watch this video where I take you back to basics and explain why you don't need to be a computer guru to give your students an amazing experience in your class. For the best insight, support, and strategies for teaching social studies, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when a new video drops every Sunday. If you've been feeling nervous that your teaching won't be as effective because you're not very comfortable with tech, by the end of this video, you'll have a better idea of how you can construct an online course that serves your purpose, that addresses your student needs, and I'll also be spilling the tea on the only tech tools you actually need to accomplish this. If you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Cecilia Temes, and I have been an educator for over a decade. And for the past 5 years, I have helped fellow history teachers by offering support, resources, and solutions to help them be effective educators and avoid teacher burnout. If you're a new history teacher that could benefit from the support and the insight of a nurturing and helpful community, I invite you to join my free Facebook group, the History Teachers Lounge, by clicking the link below. So typically when we're feeling extremely overwhelmed with all this tech that's coming our way, it's because we're not doing several things, or because we are in a mindset where we feel like we should be masters at all the tech. So I have a couple of tips in order for you to, first of all, put yourself in a place where you avoid tech overwhelm. Because the truth is, and I can say this from personal experience, having taught so long, sometimes when we have too many options, it's kind of like our brain freezes up and we don't even know where to start. So the first tip that I'm going to give you is you want to make sure that you recycle your tech. I know that typically we hear a lot of new information and new ideas, but there is absolutely zero shame in using the same tech tools if you know that they work for you, if your students have already gotten accustomed to them, and if you know that they're going to work for you. I also highly advise against trying to replicate your face-to-face classroom. Sometimes this can lead to roadblocks that we create ourselves because we're too focused on trying to replicate an activity to give our students a similar experience when we need to be thinking, how can I create a more basic, attainable version of this that will not lead me to be frustrated and just overwhelmed. Now, I've been guilty of this too, so I'm saying this from a place of love, but please make sure that you are avoiding teacher comparisonitis, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, oh my gosh, especially when you see it online, right? You see these teachers and they're cranking out these amazing, flawless lessons and they know all the tech, and it makes you feel like, oh, gosh, maybe I'm not being an efficient enough teacher, or I'm not doing enough, or I'm shortchanging my students out of the best learning experience possible because I don't know all of that and my lessons are not as bomb as that. So avoid comparisonitis so that you can focus on what you need to do that's best for your students. Because don't forget, we may see other teachers and they may have spectacular lessons. This is definitely not to discredit them. Tech can do amazing things, but you have to keep in mind that they may have a very different student population than what you have. So you need to find what works best for you. Now, when you're getting ready to determine what tech will actually help you and your students for your purposes, you need to ask yourself two very important questions. And that is, what are my time constraints? So how much time do I actually have for instructing my class? That be daily, that be synchronous time, asynchronous time. Whether your class is a semester-long course or a whole year course, you need to be very cognizant of the time and not want to incorporate so much tech and resources and little bells and whistles that you end up running out of time and not really focusing on the content and the learning outcomes. You also need to ask yourself, what are your students expected to know by the end of their time in class with you? And the reason I mention this is because I know that tech is trending right now, if you will, in the education world. However, if you've read a book that I recently read called Teaching in the Post-COVID Classroom, it has some great insight about the fact that teaching online is not about the tech. It never has been about the tech. It always has to and should continue to focus on the content. How can you get the content across? That's all tech is designed to do. So you need to be very clear about what are the absolute topics that I have to cover by the end of the time in this course. And then you can start to think about what tools will help me facilitate this given my time constraints, given my student needs. Now, there's also one other thing that you need to keep in mind, and that is, what is your student's comfort level with tech? Because let's say that you are a very advanced and knowledgeable teacher with tech, but your students are not. Then literally your course is going to be like a hit and miss, because you are creating all these resources and you're requesting that your students utilize all these tools that maybe they've never heard of, they've never done, they've never tried. And depending on your student population, and if they're not very comfortable with tech, you're going to make it extra challenging to make your content, which is, we said, the meat and potatoes. You're going to make it more challenging to make the content accessible for your learners. Now, this final preparation tip, I have to give it to you from a place of love and from a place of experience, because I have been so guilty of doing this. And that is, you must be practical. I know that sometimes we may see some ideas online, and this is kind of the slippery slope with just grabbing ideas here and there at random from online resources. And I know maybe that you're well-meaning, trying to create a more engaging experience for your learners, but you need to be practical and realistic. If you know that there is no way, Jose, you're going to be able to learn how to use a specific tool or how to implement it in your class by the time you need to present a certain topic, just keep it real with yourself. It's so easy to want to vamp up the engagement factor, but we have to remember this is a challenging year. There's a lot going on in the world, and you want to make sure that you make this easy for you and that you make this easy for your students. So keep it practical, save yourself some headaches, some time and trouble, and allow for your students to easily access your content. Before I share some of the only tech tools you actually need to create an effective and engaging learning environment, comment below and let me know what are your go-to tech tools. And don't worry, y'all, this is a judgment-free zone. Once you have a clear understanding of your students' comfort level with technology, once you gauge what is realistic given your time constraints and your content, we're ready to look at some of the essential tech tools you might utilize for instruction. So the first one is your learning platform. So many of you have heard of Canvas. Others sometimes use Google Classroom. The reason why I recommend this as like one of the bare bones, like tech to learn and focus on, is because it does provide a lot of integrated features that will make it so much easier for you to collaborate with your class, coordinate, keep a schedule, create a routine, keep in touch with your students, communicate with parents, even sometimes grade, right? So I highly recommend that you do invest the time and the energy to learn your learning platform if your school district suggested one. And if you stay till the end of the video, I will be sharing a website that will help you learn the ins and outs of your specific learning platform. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Second is hooking your learners. Now, if you watch any of the videos on this channel, you know that I'm a huge proponent on hooking learners before you deliver instruction. So some tools that I highly recommend to do this are actually the most basic and accessible. And of course, I'm talking about YouTube. I know that YouTube seems like a no-brainer, but if there's any tool that you want to use as a go-to for a visual and not make it overly complicated, it's YouTube, because it provides visual support for our students and our most vulnerable learning populations. It really creates context for our students to understand and grasp the historical events that we're going to be discussing in class or introducing, creates a chronological sequence for them to follow, especially when you cannot be there in person to lay it all down for them, is why I recommend YouTube as essential. And the best part about this is that it's completely free. And there are tons of history teachers that specialize in creating videos and topics. And there's also a lot of educational firms that create videos and topics on historical events. So this is something that's simple, easy to use, and just a no-brainer. It's no secret that as social studies teachers, sometimes we just have to do some direct instruction. So some of the tools that I recommend for imparting direct instruction would be something like Google Slides, because again, for some of our special education students, you want to make sure that you support your learners with those visuals and with actual written descriptions of what you're going over. Nearpod and Pear Deck are also great tools that are both like PowerPoint on steroids, and they're great for interaction within your direct instruction. You also may consider Educreations that have a lot of pre-made resources that you can just plug in, and they're ready to use for direct instruction that you can pause, go over, reteach, clarify, etc. Another tool that you might like to use is Vocabulary. If you have a class that they're into music, and between you and I, even if they're not, music actually helps things stick. Vocabulary is a great tool for getting some direct instruction across and really reinforcing whatever it is that you're teaching. And they have this for different grade levels and different topics in social studies and other content areas as well. Another online resource that you can utilize for direct instruction that has some pre-made resources, learning sites like iCivics and so on. But again, you're only going to pick and choose the topics that pertain to you, that your students are going to easily pick up and make routine and are comfortable with, and also something that is easy for you to learn and that's not going to overwhelm you. One of the beauties of being intentional with the tech that you decide to use, you want to invest your time familiarizing yourself with a tech tool that can actually pull a double duty. So some tools that you can use for cooperative learning are also tools that you might be able to use for direct instruction. A tool that I recommend for cooperative learning that you can double duty is something like Pear Deck, Nearpod. Jamboard is very user-friendly, and it is a Google integration. It can be a very powerful and super simple tool. Like in 3 seconds, you can figure it out. When I taught online, one of the tools that I most relied on, that I heavily invested and decided to focus my time on, was Flipgrid. One, because my students were already familiar with it and I knew how to use it. And two, because it was a great tool for collaboration. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know if my students would have been amenable or known how to collaborate in a breakout room, but if you have laid a good foundation for this to happen, and maybe you teach an older group of students, breakout rooms would be ideal. However, in my particular case, Flipgrid was ideal for my student population, and it really allowed me to keep tabs and really oversee some of the discussions that were being had among the students, and I felt it was just a better setting for a younger student group. Another tool that I use for collaboration, but also to assess, is a tool called Quizlet. And you can use a Quizlet Live tool to play a game among your entire class. And I use this quite frequently, which leads me to my last tech resource. Those are some tools for assessing your learners. Some of the tools that I've utilized in the past that I feel are really user-friendly is Quiz. And that is probably by far one of my most favorite tools for assessments, because it grades the content for you. So all you need to do is literally download the scores. You can actually embed your learning standards so that you know, depending on what question is missed, which learning standard your student needs to improve on. And it's just a great tool to provide overall feedback. There's also some other tools that are kind of up and coming for review, which are Gimkit and Blookit, that might be worth looking into, but I highly recommend Quizzes only because this year, the easier the better, and that one does grade the material for you. If you found this video helpful, allow me to recommend some other videos that I think you might enjoy, and that is the lowdown on blended learning, and that one I'll go ahead and link it up above and down below. And that one is more about how to manage your online learning setting environment. I also have a video called Teaching versus Facilitating, and this video will help you create a more equitable balance that prompts students to take initiative of their own learning. And finally, I also recommend reimagining cooperative learning for the online setting. And this one is for when you feel like you're ready to try your hand at online collaborations. I'll also link a channel that is called Flipped Classroom, and I can't tell you how invaluable those videos are. They're short, they're sweet and to the point, and they will literally show you how to use pretty much all the tech that I listed in this video. At the end of this video, make sure you click the link below where it says Teach Like an Influencer. to check out other personalized solutions and support that I can offer you. My virtual door is always open, and don't forget, I am rooting for you. I hope you have an amazing day. Until next time, class dismissed.